like to call the meeting to order, please. Thank you all for being here. Remember to silence your right arm or your left arm or whatever this is, or both arms, I guess, is the way we use them anymore. Appreciate you all being here. I assumed we would have good turnout as everybody has got cabin fever and wants out of the house for any reason that they can get out of there. So it's good to have you all. I appreciate you being here. With that said, let's start with our reports. We'll start with ACC.
Good morning. Thank you. First of all, I have to say this has been a very slow start this year. We met twice in the month of January and certainly twice this month already. But that being said, we've only had 5 new permits for new homes and 17 miscellaneous permits for the calendar year. On a fiscal year basis, we have had 26 new permits for homes and 44 miscellaneous. Brent and I were checking the other day so we don't become too worried. Because of everything that happened in the fall, we're going to have probably about 35 new homes coming on the market here in the next 60 days because they're finally finishing out. And assuming those all turn fairly well, then we should have a lot more activity going on thereafter. But so far this calendar year has been very slow. So that's all we have to report.
Okay. Thank you, Johnny. Any questions? Comments?
I do have a question.
Yes.
This is not about what you were just talking about, but I was wondering, has Brent started implementing the regulations that we approved for the derelict property, not delinquent.
Is your mic on?
I don't know. Is my mic on?
Yeah. Now, yeah, I can hear it now. Okay.
Your wording, some of the derelict is probably delinquent as well, based on what we know so far. But no, it has not been instituted to this point. There's a letter going to be put out relative to the fact that these rules are being implemented, and we also want to get an item in the columns, I believe, before we do that, so that everybody's aware that in fact it is in place and is now in a position to be enforced. So that should be happening. Those items, those articles should be coming out very shortly, and then we'll be in a position to start implementing that.
Yeah, I mentioned it in my article, and also Brandon, his article, outlines the new rules. So we want to communicate it to members first before we enforce.
Good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We'll do audit and bylaws. Mr. Maurer.
Bylaws Committee did not meet in February. A meeting is scheduled for March the 10th to review DCR PL-15-02-001, which addresses Policy Section 21 entitled Working with Youths Under Age 18. The Audit Committee met on February the 10th with the Rylander, Clay, and Orbit's representatives. Michael and Janet also attended. PPOA received another clean audit, and my understanding this morning is that the treasurer will read for the record the auditor's report or opinion at the annual meeting. Is that correct?
At the annual meeting?
At the annual meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
I'll be glad to do that, yes.
Do you need a copy of it?
No, I don't have one, but I can get it. I bet you I know somebody's got it.
Okay, the following people have signed up for the Bylaws Committee for the next year. Robert Maurer, Chairman, Tom Bazone, Ricky Eads, Mike Robinius. Larry Swift did not wish to continue. I think he's been on the Bylaws Committee for 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure exactly how long, and I want to thank him for his service. I plan to move that those 4 people who have signed up be approved for the Bylaws Committee at the annual meeting.
That is a requirement. Okay?
That's the report from the Bylaws Committee and the Audit Committee. Any questions?
Comments? Thank you, Mr. Maurer. We appreciate it very much. Finance Committee. Mr. Bazone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We had a very busy day. We met at our regularly scheduled time yesterday, and we had a total of 8 authorizations for expenditure. The first one was AFE 15-03-03 for a zero-turn mower, and that was presented by Daniel Van Patten. Staff increases in the addition of the clubhouse grounds and sports fields to the mowing areas requires the purchase of this additional mower to maximize our efficiency. The AFE was unanimously approved for presentation to the board in the amount of $16,300. This was, by the way, in the budget for the year. AFE 15-03-04 to replace our current flail mower was also presented by Daniel Van Patten. The current flail mower no longer has parts available and is in poor condition. That AFE was also approved for presentation to the board in the amount of $6,573, which is one of the bids. AFE 15-03-05 for replacement of the clubhouse basement HVAC unit was presented also by Daniel Van Patten. This unit controls the temperature in the facilities office, channel 191, shop and storage areas, and the housekeeping area. The current unit is inoperable and beyond repair. The AFE was unanimously approved for presentation to the board in the amount of $3,000 for the purchase of the unit and the associated hardware. Installation will be done in-house as usual. AFE 15-03-06 for replacement of our compaction roller was presented also by Daniel Van Patten. The current roller, which is used to provide smooth finish to our road patches, is undersized for many of our projects, and it doesn't provide the smooth finish we expect. It also is not very mobile. The unit that is going to replace it will be able to be towed behind a truck instead of having to be put on a flatbed. The present unit is very difficult to move from job to job and is very near the end of its useful life, although it will be retained and used until it dies. The AFE was unanimously approved for presentation to the board in the amount of $18,000. Daniel will shop around for the best deal on a used unit, which may actually cost less than the requested amount. So he requested an amount that he thinks will get him a piece of equipment that he really wants, but it could cost less. Next is AFE 15-02-01 for drainage facility repair at 8804 Briarfield Road. That was also presented by Daniel Van Patten. As has been mentioned at previous workshops, this is one of what is expected to be a number of drainage projects that have become apparent as a result of the torrential rains last year. The drainage system at 8804 Briarfield is inadequate to handle large rain episodes, and repeated episodes will damage the road if these repairs are not made. The AFE was unanimously approved for presentation to the board in the amount of $87,000. Any questions? Next is AFE 15-10-04 for replacement of the current archery range building, and that was presented by Keith Casterlin. This AFE was previously reviewed by the Finance Committee and approved for presentation to the board in the amount of $37,000 in December of 2014. The board did not approve the AFE because there were questions about the lack of sufficient detail in the specifications that were sent to bidders. After Dan Kreis provided more complete specifications, a revised AFE based on those specifications was presented to the Finance Committee yesterday. The new specifications took into account the location of the building in a flood-prone area and conformity to code requirements that will result in a more structurally sound and durable structure. The Finance Committee agreed that the request for an additional $7,000 to do this was justified on this basis and unanimously approved the AFE for presentation to the board in the amount of $44,000. So that's $7,000 more than the previous one.
you do this, all this work?
Any questions? The next AFE is AFE 15-10-11 to replace the packed pool fence enclosure, and that was presented by Keith Casterlin. Excuse me. The original fence is severely deteriorated and does not comply with Texas standards for pool enclosures. The requested funds will be used to replace the fence enclosure with commercial-grade powder-coated galvanized iron. In addition, the project will include construction of a 90-foot-long, 6-foot-high CMU block wall at the south end of the pool deck. This wall will prevent debris from entering the pool due to the prevailing southwesterly winds and provide a stable surface for storage of life-saving and safety equipment, signage, and maintenance poles. The AFE was unanimously approved for presentation to the board in the amount of $25,000. Next is AFE 15-10-10 for golf course equipment replacement, and that was presented by Janice Shefsky on behalf of Michael Underwood, who was out of town yesterday. The requested equipment is comprised of a suite of 2 fairway mowers, 1 greens aerifier, 1 spreader, 1 utility triplex mower, and 2 zero-turn deck mowers. All of this equipment is used in the routine maintenance of the golf course, and the current equipment has reached or exceeded its useful lifetime, so it needs to be replaced. Failure to replace this equipment in a timely manner will result in declining golf course conditions and increased operational expenses. This AFE was unanimously approved for presentation to the board in the amount of $202,650. That's it for the AFEs. Any questions on the AFEs?
Any questions on AFEs? It was a very, very busy meeting. There was a lot to do.
All of these AFEs, were they scheduled for the capital asset study for this year, or were they moved?
All except the archery range and the Briarfield drainage project. They were scheduled in the sense that for example, the archery range was provided with $30,000 originally in the budget as a place marker because it was not known what... It was. Okay. It definitely was. Briarfield was in there in general as a drainage project, but not this particular amount at this particular place because it was unknown at that time what the actual projects will be, and I think Sam will update you on where they are on the drainage projects.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the financials. Janice reported that for January 2015, expenses exceeded revenues by $28,364 versus a budgeted amount of negative $21,872 for a negative variance to budget of $6,492 for the month. Year-to-date, revenues have exceeded expenses by $108,645 versus a budget of negative $34,756 for a positive variance to budget of $142,401. The current year-end forecast projection for fiscal year 2015 now stands at a net income of $46,921. That completes my report.
Questions? Any discussion? Like I said, it was a very busy meeting, but these were scheduled replacements of the equipment and the like, so it's just one of those things that we got to go through and approve and get on with. So appreciate your hard work on it, on your committee. Thank you. Linmo Committee.
Thank you. The Linmo Committee did not meet this night.
Okay, thank you. Long Range Planning, Mr. Lewis.
Long Range Planning Committee did meet on a normally scheduled time of February 9th. We have basically completed the work in developing various financial models, and now we're beginning to turn the crank and try to understand exactly what that means to us as far as what we can and can't do. And we are prepared to present a status report to the board very shortly here. We've done some drafting on the preliminary write-ups for background, and we still see that we will complete the schedule as planned.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments? Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Bartholomew.
Thank you, Mr. President. Why don't we start out with infrastructure? Sam Watts, please.
Thank you, Mark. As Tom mentioned, the infrastructure has met the last 2 months on drainage. They've been long and at times kind of confusing, but I think we've got a better understanding of what's going on. In January, our engineer presented his idea of the drainage plan. And in February, I tried to explain to our committee members what he said. Now, whether I did or did not, I don't know, but we have pretty well got everything prioritized, starting with the Briarfield and basically going upstream. Now, we have to take care of the downstream problems before we can start working on the upstream to some extent. There are a couple of projects that we can skip and go to upstream to relieve some of the downstream flooding. But we've identified 14 projects, and a couple, maybe 3 in this, don't necessarily have to do with the flooding from that area. There are other drainage situations that have come up. And then also there's one project in here that has to do, is work in conjunction with Orchard 12 that we'll have to take care of. And it had been in the works for some years now, but with Orchard 12, it puts us in a little more hurry-up attitude on it. Tom said the Briarfield AFE has been submitted. We've got the bids in, and the bids ranged from the low of, for the AFE, of $87,000 to $200,000. And I feel like the $200,000 was probably a contractor that just didn't want the job. So I hope that's the situation. The $87,000 was well within the range of the estimate of the engineer, so we'll feel pretty comfortable with that. We will begin area inspections, all the streets and drainages in April, and this will probably require a couple of months, April, May, and it's a good time for our group to get out and look at the streets again. Hopefully all of the winter weather is over with. I don't know how much damage we've incurred in this last storm. Do we have any major damage on the roads, or just?
Nothing significant that I've seen yet. Of course, we've got another round coming through the weekend, so we'll see when it warms up.
We've been fairly fortunate in this winter that we haven't had a lot of ice on the roads, so the roads should be in pretty good shape. That's all I have at this time.
Any comments, questions for infrastructure? Thank you, Sam. Doug Crummy, Airport Committee.
Good morning. The Airport Committee did meet this month. We have only one item to report. First off, we'd like to thank Daniel Van Patten, the Board of Directors, and the Wildlife Committee for all their work on the harvesting of the deer. It's our understanding that 120 deer were harvested out of the airport. That has greatly increased the safety in the airport. What used to be herds in the air park is now few to none. So thank you very much for that hard work. That's all I have to report.
Comments, questions for Airport? Marlin and the Grounds Committee.
Thank you. Our grounds committee did meet in February at the scheduled time, and one thing that I want to report this morning, I think that the board and all of our members will be interested in. We've been promoting, I believe we call it "Keep Pecan Clean" on our marquee, and we have a slogan, "Pick Up Pecan," and other things. And we have scheduled, the grounds committee has worked with our staff and scheduled a litter walk on April the 12th. Chris Wilmuth and Steve Hohenschelt has done a great deal of groundwork in communicating and in organizing that, and it sounds like, although some of the details are preliminary, it sounds like a great plan. Right now, we're planning together at the PAC at 1 o'clock. This is Sunday afternoon, and pick up instructions as to where to go and the bags for the litter and vest if necessary, etc. And then going out at 1:30. And then after the litter walk, we'll return to PAC for ice cream sundaes. So and the big thing I want to stress this morning is that this really is a community effort, not a grounds committee effort, and as such, we want all of our committee, we want to ask all of our committee chairs to mention this and bring this up to their committees in their meetings between now and then. Ask them to participate and to be a part of this. And as we go out in the community, let's make this known and invite your friends and go out for a nice Sunday afternoon walk and help clean up Pecan. That's all I have.
Great project. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Maurer. It will be on the 12th of April, 1 o'clock at the PAC. Any other comments, questions for the Grounds Committee? Let's move right along to Sports and Rec. Keith Castellan's down there with a report.
Sports and Recreation Committee met its regular time on February 3rd. Items discussed were the status of the ongoing projects we have and upcoming projects. On a special note, tennis, wants to report that sadly our tennis pro Gonzalo Nunez and family are going to be leaving us after a successful tenure here, about 8 years. They did a great job, and we wish them the best. They're going to be moving to Switzerland, where his wife is from, and it was nothing due to here. They would have loved to have stayed here forever and retired, but her family members, her mother and father, passed away in the last year, and there was a sizable estate and a lot of stuff to wrap up over in Switzerland. It could take, a year and a half just to do that. So, they want to report that, they're continuing business as usual. Their house is on the market, and search is already being conducted for a tennis pro, and we think we fell into an outstanding candidate that so we can make a seamless transition when that time comes. Other items discussed in the Sports and Recreation Committee, we're gearing up for our busy season, gearing up for spring and spring break. We got some fun activities coming, and especially one of our most anticipated youth events of the year, which is the Easter egg hunt, will be coming soon, and we asked for volunteers to help with the stuffing of that. And as always, just please consult the current columns that comes out, because our events and activities are constantly changing, and the staff and over at the PAC and the committee itself are doing great work, and that's all I have.
Any other comments, questions for Sports and Rec? Thank you, Keith. Let's move on to the Marina Committee and Joe Hartman.
For a change, I have a little bit of good news on the lake level. Right now, it's only minus 9.84 instead of the normal 10 plus. The committee met this month. The discussion point was the floating dock for the gas pump and fishing pier, and the committee would like to add in the causing us to go out and re-seek bids, a roof for it so that it'd be an all-weather type thing so people could go there and fish if it's raining or sunny and not have to worry about the elements. That was the major thing for a good winter meeting. The next meeting we have planned is on 3 March, and we're also planning a work day on either the 14th or the 21st of March, depending on the weather on those days. That's all I have to report.
Thank you, Joe. Any comments, questions? Let's move on to Tammy Dressman and Horse Owners Committee.
Good morning. Currently, the stables is full, and we have 5 people on a waiting list. They've been doing some fencing around some of the pastures, I think, as material's been available, and that's very much appreciated and needed and looking great. We've also asked Daniel about getting a fertilizer and weed treatment done in the pastures, and I think he's checking into that. I think Michael Underwood maybe helps with that sometimes. And then we had also asked about the possibility of getting the alleyway paved with either some type of roughed up asphalt or cement. And we're going to be getting some bids on that. But we were also wondering if the company that does the roads when they're out here working, if it might be a possibility when they're out here to just see if there's any extra that they would put in the alleyway. And I don't know what that possibility is or who we need to ask about that.
Daniel Van Patten would be a good place to start, and Daniel will help you out. And
which we've done. I just didn't know if I needed to do anything on our end.
no, we'll take it from there.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any other comments, questions for Tammy? Okay, the only other thing we have as far as the committees, the President's Ball is Friday night, so please, if you haven't signed up, there's still time to do so, to recognize our outgoing board president, Rod Heichman, Beverly Franson, and Ray Lewis. So if you haven't made plans, please plan. It should be a great party, casino theme, and it should be a lot of fun for all who attend. And Mr. President, I believe that concludes our committee reports for this evening. And don't forget the March annual meeting, March the 7th, 11 a.m.
Thank you. Appreciate it. The only comment that I have is vote. You have another week and a half, approximately. Be sure and get out and vote. We'd appreciate that. Yes, sir.
I have a question on the deer tramping. I think that Doug Crumride had mentioned there was 120 or so captured out of the airpark area. What's our total so far to date?
267?
247.
247. Okay. Thank you.
And we do intend to trap again, at least one more time and possibly 2. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. We can go till the end of March, so we hope to get them out here when the weather improves and have at least 2 more trappings before then.
And with that, thank you all for all that you do and all that you have done, and we are adjourned.